And hello everyone, welcome back to another Bootstrap tutorial. So in this tutorial, we'll be taking a look at colors in Bootstrap. Bootstrap provides a ton of colors and I'll point out the most important ones to remember. But they do provide a ton of colors out of the box, so you don't have to add color to your text manually using CSS if you know how to use that. But let's go here and let's actually use it. I'm going to remove this KBD there. And now we have just some normal text. Now we can add a class. And here's a few things we can use here. For example, text and then muted. It's pretty self-explanatory. It will make the text look a bit more muted. We can actually have a p tag here for all of them to kind of view the difference. Lorem. There we go, so that's the difference. It will make it stand out less. Then there's text primary. This is one of the colors you want to remember, primary. It gives it a nice bluish color, and you use this primary blue with a lot of types of things in Bootstrap, so I would recommend you remember primary. Also success. This gives it a nice greenish color, as you can see there. Also another color you should preferably remember. And info, this makes it also a nice blue, but it's a more lightish blue. And yeah, just also remember info. Then there's warning, and this is red, or not red, but yellow. And it just basically shows a warning. It's pretty self-explanatory as well. Also one of those you should remember. Then there's danger, and danger is red to show some dangerous text. Also another one you should remember. And lastly, secondary. And this gives you not really a muted color, but it's gray. It gives you a gray color. And this is the last one you should remember. The rest of this you don't have to remember that much. You also have white. And this will make the text white, of course. So you can't see it on a white background. Then you have dark. And this will make the text dark. It does look a little bit darker, but I think this is just normal color. That might just be my eyes playing tricks on me. Light. Light is what you usually use if you have a dark theme on your page. Then you can use light, which isn't purely white. It's just more light. Cool. Now if we can also go black, and this will give a black text color. Now you can also give these like certain opacities, like 50% opacity, meaning it's going to be see-through 50%, as you can see. And you can do the same with white. That will also make it see-through 50%. Not that it will matter on a light background, but yeah, it will make it see-through. You can also give them background colors. I'm going to add another class here because just to show you can add multiple classes on one element. You don't necessarily just have to add one class per element. You can add multiple classes. For example, BG and primary. And this will make the background the primary color. And let's just keep the text white. We don't necessarily need that. You also have success. And you have all of the other colors I showed you before. You have info, warning, danger, secondary, dark, light, white. But I'm not going to go through all of them every time because there's a lot. And that is basically how to change your text and their background color. Now, here is something I actually kind of started talking about in my HTML course. But I never really got too deep into it because we didn't really know a lot about HTML yet. But this right here is a div. And as I said, div contains a bunch of other items. Now, I'm pretty sure if I were to remove this, we won't see this color anymore. Yeah. And we can just say style, width, and here we can say 50 pixels, and then height, 50 pixels. And this will just size it up to be 50 pixels by 50 pixels in width and height. That's all this styling here does. Now you can add a bunch of cool things here. For example, let's keep the, let's not keep the color. Or let's make it secondary, like that, so you can still see it. We can actually zoom in a bit. So here is our square. And let's also just give it a margin. You don't have to worry about any of this. There we go. So you don't have to worry about the styling here at all. We'll do that in a future tutorial, but you just have to worry about this. This here just makes like the square be here and this size. Now we can add things like a border by saying border. And now I can also remove this background secondary. Now, as you can see, it has a very light border around it. You can also specify if there should be a border or not by specifying a number next to it like 0, and that means no border. You can use this with other things, for example, allow a border, but then border top 0. Now there's a border everywhere except on the top of this square. And you can do this with basically all sides, so bottom, and now there's not on the bottom. Start, and that means there's not on the start here, and then end is not at the end. Like that. You can also specify for just one side, like border top, and now there's just a border at the top, or border bottom, or you could specify more than one, border top as well, and now there's a border at bottom and top, but not at start and end. You can change the border width by the number, for example border, and then add a number here, for example 3, and now the width will be a bit more, as you can see there. You can go up until about 5, and it will give you a pretty thick border, and let's just add a normal border as well, so you can see the whole border. There we go. You can change the border color with all of the colors we have listed before. So border primary, this will make it bluish, and you can change it to danger, that'll make it red, and you can make it info, warning, success, secondary, all of those colors there. Yet again, not going to go through all of them. You can also make the borders look pretty neat, such as rounded. This will make the border a bit rounded, which I usually like seeing. And you can also specify only like at the top. Now it's only rounded at the top, but at the bottom it still has like this pointiness. And you can of course say bottom, end, start. However, for example, end will now only do it here, but here it's still pointy. And start and wherever, it's basically the same pattern. You just give it a different word at the start. So rounded and then top, bottom, start, end. You also go rounded and then circle, and this will make it a nice circle. You also go pill, and this will make it a pill. However, your width will need to be longer or more than your height, or other way around, because now it's a pill. But if you were to say circle, then now it will be a weird circle. So there's a difference between pill and circle, just take note. So this is pill, circle will not look this good. And here, of course, if you were to make this longer, then it will be other pill. So now it will be a pill that looks like that and not sideways. Cool. You can also specify how round it should be. For example, 1. Now it will be a tiny bit rounded, but if you go up until 5, then it will be no rounded at all. So 1, it will be the most rounded. 4 will be a little bit rounded. 3, a little bit rounded. 2, a little bit more rounded. 1, bit more rounded. So that's pretty cool. Now one thing that I do like, so let me just remove all of that, is sometimes I like to float my content, which just means align it to the left or to the right. Now let's say I have 2 buttons. Now the first button says click me 1, second one says click me 2. And of course we could just make them look a bit better, like that. And they're very big. Let me just zoom out a bit. Okay, there's our buttons. Now here we could say class is clear fix, and this will allow us to use 2 other classes, class and float, and then where you want to float it to, so start or end. Start, and this can be end. Now these buttons are floated next to each other. One is at the end, one is at the front. And that's what float does. This will now float at the start. If we were to remove this, not much would change, as you can see. But if we were to remove this end here, then it will no longer float at the end. But depending on how your website is built, you might want to actually use float start as well. You can also make it a bit more supportive on smaller screens. For example, float, and in the size, for example, LX, or no, XL for X large. Now it doesn't float unless the screen is X large. Let me actually go LG, otherwise my screen might not be big enough. Now, if I were to resize my screen, then give it a second, and actually my screen can't go big enough. Let me go MD instead. MD, there we go. Now if I resize it, as you can see, it now floats, but once my screen is this big, it doesn't float anymore. So you can make it only float if the screen is a specific size. And I do believe we did talk a little bit about this when we talked about our containers and grids. So if you haven't seen that video, I do recommend you do. But of course you have all of the same ones here. For example, you have SM, MD, LG, XL, XXL for XX large. And then you of course have, last but not least, float none. This means you don't float at all. We do not allow you to float, as you can see. Now, one cool thing you can also do is we can go here and say BG, and then let's just go danger. And now we can see the background. Let's also remove a button there, and remove clear fix, and remove float start. There we go. Now this basically gives us a nice background, right? We can also say W for the width, and then how much this width should be. So 25 would mean basically 25% of the website length. So if we go like this, as you can see, it's just kind of 25% here. And then we have 50, which means 50%. So it takes up 50%. And then 75. So that takes up 75% of the website width. And then 100. And this will take up the full width. So that's kind of how to change the width of something. You can do the same with height. So here we could go H instead of W. Now it would be as high as it can go. However, due to how HTML is basically created, we will have to make this body style height 100 VH. You don't have to worry about what that means, but now it can go full 100. If we make it 25, then it can only go 25 the height. You don't have to worry about what this means. It just makes the whole body width or height full height and not just based on what's inside of it. But you don't have to worry about that right now. That's CSS crap. Cool. Now you can add margin and padding, where margin would be the outside. For example, the space between this one and this edge here, that's padding. Where the space between this and this here is margin, in a sense. You can add margin to stuff by going here. We can just say class and then M and then how much of a margin you want to give it. So here, 1 would give you this. As you can see, a nice small margin. If you go 5, then we'll give you a nice big margin where it's the outside. So it's everything outside of this. As you can see, this is a margin of 5. However, the padding is the inside, not the outside, but the inside. We'll go deeper into the padding and margin in CSS tutorial, but for now, you just need to know margin is outside, padding is inside. Now, if we go here, we say P, they will make the padding that size and not the margin. And we can, of course, add both. Now, it will look like this. Both paddings are basic, or both are basically the same amount. I'm going to remove this class stuff here and also this padding stuff, or we can keep that padding. It's actually not that bad, and it actually keeps off the margin as well. Now you can also add a shadow to stuff. At first you have your shadow and none, which basically means no shadow at all. Then you have your shadow SM for a small shadow, and then your shadow, which is a normal shadow. And then you of course have your, if you go like that, then you can see it's not very noticeable, but it is there. And then you of course have your shadow LG for a large shadow. Nice. You can also make things visible or invisible, where if we were to remove all of this, then here we could say invisible, and that will make this button invisible. The button is still there, so the button is no longer visible to our eyes. If we make it visible, then it will of course be visible. It's by default visible. A special case of buttons, however, is you can go btn close, and this will make the button a nice close button if we just remove this text here. Some people really struggle to make a button look like that, but they don't know that Bootstrap has this built in for them, this nice close button. Nice. Now sometimes you want text to only be able to be read by screen readers. So I'm going to make a p tag here and put some lorem in it. Now let's say you have some text, but you don't want people to see it, but you want it to be there as extra context for screen readers. Well, then you can say class and visually hidden, meaning we can't see it, but screen readers still can. So now screen readers will still read this, it can still read this, but we cannot see it anymore. And yeah, that is that. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed and now know how to style everything a tad bit better. And I will see you all again on the next Bootstrap tutorial.